Actors, we've all got issues, so let's talk about them. I'm your host, Juan Ayala, and this is Actors with Issues. In today's episode, we speak with Nehal Joshi from the Broadway production of The Cottage in performances at the Hayes Theater in New York City until October 29th. Nehal, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So before we dive into the issues and in The Cottage, little Nehal was born and raised in Virginia. So what was the road like getting to Broadway? How did we get here today?
Wow. So I studied biology in college. I studied to be a doctor. I was pre-med, and I had always done theater. I had always had a kind of I wouldn't say obsessive personality, but I really get into something that I'm into. I was a soccer player from the time I was like 5 until the time I was 16, 6 days a week. So I get really into things. And while I was in college, I also studied theater as a minor, and I spent a summer abroad in London through the English department studying Shakespeare because I was really into Shakespeare and sort of came to theater through straight theater, as they call it. And I studied the Globe when Mark Rylance was the artistic director there, and I got to do some scenes on the stage with some of the actors who work there regularly. And I remember we were doing Othello, and one of the actors was like, "You could do this for a living if you wanted to do this. You have a lot of natural affinity toward this," which was like, I guess, the first time I really thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was there, I kind of immersed myself in theater in a real way, like seeing shows pretty much every night. I ate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in London so that I could afford to see shows. And then when I came back, I really started getting, I guess the bug sort of started taking over and biology sort of started getting tamped down. And when I left school, I got into the Actors Theater Louisville's apprentice program. So I went there for a year to pretty much study my craft and immerse myself in the world of being an actor. And I think I learned more from actually doing it than sitting in a classroom and doing it. And then I left there and I went to where I'm from, which is right outside Washington, D.C., which has a great theater scene. And I was an actor there for about 4 years, sort of just really learning my chops. And then I met a girl while I was there, and she took me to New York. And within like 6 months, she'd gotten me with her agent. And I had an audition for a show called Three Penny Opera, a revival about with Alan Cumming and Cyndi Lauper and Hannah Gadsden and a bunch of other people. And I somehow ended up booking a swing spot in that. And that was sort of my Broadway debut and started me on my journey. And I've been fairly lucky since that. So I'm pretty blessed to say that I'm just an actor, and that's pretty much all I do, and primarily just an actor in theater.
Mm. Is more sort of like on-screen work anywhere on your radar, or is theater really where you want to stay and delve in?
I love theater because it's so much more of an actor's medium. You know, on-screen work, you're so much more subjected to what an editor thinks of your performance, or what an editor needs from your performance, or director needs from your performance. Obviously, who doesn't want to do TV and film because you make so much more money doing it?
Right.
And theater is kind of a vow of poverty. But I just, there's something about the energy of a live performance, the sort of exchange between an audience quietly. The great thing about theater is that the thing that we do better than anyone else, better than film and TV, like film and TV can blow things up. They can take you to places you've never been before. They can show you things you've never seen before. But what they can't do is put you in a room with a live person going through an experience. And like every night in a show, you create this little town where everybody's experiencing the same thing at the same time. And it's like one of the most beautiful things you could go through. And so I think I'm addicted to that. And so it's why I never leave theater.
So, sort of speaking of that energy with the audience, I mean, with The Cottage, I did get to see it. I think it was about a week and a half ago at this point. And I mean, I haven't laughed that hard in the theater since I saw The Play That Goes Wrong. And it was just so funny, and everyone was just so brilliantly cast. So, I mean, you know, in the best way possible, it felt like during certain moments, someone was trying to get a bigger laugh than the last, but without pulling focus. Sometimes there's like that fine line of like, okay, now you're distracting, but like just
Yeah.
it got more and more funny as the show goes on. It was brilliant. So bravo all around to you and everyone involved. Like
Thank
really, it
you.
was such a fun
Thank you.
experience.
Michael McKean, the famous actor, came last week and he said something really great. He's like, I've never seen 6 actors try to steal the scene from each other so succinctly and successfully at the same time.
Yeah,
So I
wonderful.
think
But
it's
yeah.
kind of brilliant.
And you're working with some heavy like, sort of comedy and theater hitters. I mean, Eric McCormack and Laura Bell Bunny, Lily Cooper, Alex Moffat. So like
Mhm.
what's been the biggest learning experience in your run with The Cottage?
I would say that it's really weird to use the word like just allowing things to happen. You know, just not trying to put anything on something, and just it's really comedy is so democratic. You know, something
Yeah.
is either funny or it's not. That's it. That's why it's also so hard because it is truly a meritocracy in that
Yeah.
way. And so little in the world is a meritocracy. Comedy is a meritocracy because some people find something funny, some people don't either. But it's either funny or it's not. And as long as the laugh is sort of the ultimate arbiter of whether something stays or not. And so for us, it was just always trying to work on the joke, try to make the joke the best joke possible. And there's a lot of effort in that show. It's actually one of the hardest things I've ever done
Mm.
because of the amount of craft that's involved in that in something that looks so spontaneous in the
Yeah.
moment. And so really it's just about allowing, just and never settling, allowing and never settling.
Yeah.
I think that was the biggest lesson from the show, just letting it wash over you and letting whatever comes out come out.
Yeah. And just sort of like
You
staying on
know?
your toes because you never know what's going to happen. I mean,
Yeah,
with shows like this that are
yeah.
so physically comedic and lots of props and gags, and I mentioned the play that goes wrong. Has anything gone wrong yet? Has a prop
Oh
not
yeah.
worked or something not happened on time? What are the stories there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, actually, one of the greatest things about our show is because it's so prop heavy, things often go wrong. And we have some of the like most succinct and quick, adept livers probably on Broadway. I'll give you two examples. One is there's a statue of David prop that is also has a dual function and as a lighter.
Yeah.
And some nights it doesn't light. And when that happens, Lily Cooper, the brilliant Lily Cooper, will say anything from, well, I guess size really does matter because the lighter is on a certain part of the David's person, which you could probably imagine right now as I'm describing it. And another night she says, wait, he's close. He's almost there. He's just close. And he's just there trying to light him at a certain point of his
Oh,
body. Another time is I carry a very large gun in the show,
yeah.
and the gun is cartoonish because the show is kind of cartoonish, and also, you know, guns are sensitive in today's society, and so we also wanted to make it a little clownish, so it would take away some of the teeth from it. And I used to, I would have to check if the gun was empty at one point. It was a plot point, and I would do it by banging it on this pillow on the side of a couch. And one night I went to bang it, and the muzzle went flying off through the air and clanked right down stage center. Um, to which I turned to Laura Bell Bundy, who was on stage with me, and she was in tears laughing about it. And the audience was just cackling at this point. And I turned to her and I said my next line, which is, well, it's empty now for certain. The gun was now just like me holding the butt of it. We
Right.
have a lot of that. We have a lot of like stuff that goes wrong, and it's not meant to go wrong,
Right.
which is actually kind of the best part about it. And you never know. It happens a lot in a prop heavy show where things just don't quite work out the way you want them to, and it's really fun to sort of underline the live part of theater that way and just be in the moment and come up with something hilarious because we don't even the six of us don't even know what's going to happen from night to night, and that's kind of the fun of doing it.
I have to give a shout out to the Bo understudy Tony Roach who went on for the performance that I went to.
Yeah.
As we know, recently, especially with COVID and with so many actors being out of shows, understudies and swings have finally gotten, their flowers when it comes to like the acknowledgement of how much work they put in, even if they're not in the show every night. And he was just fantastic. Like it was, obviously as an actor, I know that, understudies are just as brilliant and talented as and trained and disciplined as the principal performer, but just completely flawless with such, and again, such an intimidating like scale of a show. So funny and over the top. So like yeah, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to the
No,
understudies and
Tony's
Broadway.
fantastic. This is our second show together. We did Flying Over Sunset
Hmm.
together last year, which was the first show I did after COVID, which of course has its own issues and had its own you know, things around it. But Tony's an incredible performer, and he brings himself to it. And the great thing about it, also, when an understudy goes on for the rest of us, is that it brings a completely new energy to it.
Mm.
And so we're playing off a completely new energy. It's like having a different instrument in a symphony all of a sudden, and it's really fun. And he's so great. And it's hard for these. He's going in for Eric McCormick, and the audience knows that Eric McCormick isn't in the show that night. So there's a double burden on him when he goes on, and he carries himself with such grace. We use a word around Eric McCormick often. So yeah, he's wonderful and really a special performer.
Yeah. And going back a bit, sort of to your training days, with a lot of post college or post conservatory actors, a lot of times they feel that they're sort of just like thrust into the world without any sort of guidance. Like, okay, you've got like if you don't feel like a musical theater major, you've got great dance training, you've got um, you've got a great audition book, you've got your monologues, you've got everything prepared for an audition, but now the next step is getting the audition and sort of getting the ball rolling on your career. So what advice do you have for any actors who maybe feel stuck getting that ball rolling?
Man, it is so hard. The world is so much different now than when I was coming up. But I tried to make as many friends as possible. That's
Mhm.
sort of how I did it.
Yeah.
A lot of my work recently has come from just me being friends with people and them liking my work enough to be like, hey, do you want to do this? So it's not a lot of auditioning stuff. I mean, the thing I hear regularly now is that people can create their own content because there's YouTube, like you're doing here. There is Instagram, and people have followers, and people get jobs for the amount of followers they
Yeah.
have. I think creating your work is really important. I think knowing what's happening out there is really important. I mean, I used to go to drama books and buy a book that told me what every theater in the country was doing in their season, and I would see shows, and then I would know what parts I was right for, and then I would just try to hound my team, not hound them, but I would
Yeah.
say, "Hey, this theater's doing this show. I would love to be seen for it," or I would reach out directly if I could. So it's really about being your biggest advocate because you are your business in this business,
Yeah.
and so you have to be the one who is your best marketer. You have to be your biggest critic. You have to be your biggest fan. And so I would say that you have to invest in yourself. Make sure you're paying yourself, and make sure you're investing in yourself, and that's probably the best way to do it. But
Mhm.
it is hard. I understand that.
Yeah.
It is hard.
And with so much sort of like misinformation, there's a lot of like, acting career gurus out there and whatnot, sort of just spreading nonsense or giving advice that's like completely against sort of rule of thumb these days. Is there a misconception that you've discovered about the entertainment industry that has sort of been like debunked, like something you went in thinking like, okay, this is what everyone says, this is what it's like, and then you're in and you realize that's not the case at all?
I mean, I would say that usually it's that the best way to be successful is to find some groove, some track to sort of fall into. And that's the way to do it. Like if maybe you're the heavy set funny guy, or you're the ditzy ingenue girl, using whatever track has been used before. That that I would say is not actually true anymore. I think
Right.
individuality is much more appreciated in the world today, and you being you, I think, is your best way at having a successful career. And I think that's the thing that I was most shocked by. I always thought when I started out that I had to be a certain type.
Yeah.
I think type is getting disintegrated now. I'm really grateful for that. Actually, I think
Mhm.
that's really beautiful. You become the type. Actually,
Yeah.
there's that old joke of like they talk about an actor's career. They say, get me a somebody, get me a Jeff Daniels, then get me a guy who's like Jeff Daniels, then get me a young Jeff Daniels. In all of that, you have to be Jeff Daniels. So like, you should just be you, and maybe people will be looking for the next you essentially someday.
Yeah. There was I forget who it was. One of my favorite podcasts is Smartless with Jason
Hmm.
Bateman, Sean Hayes, and Will Arnett. And I think it was when they had Tina Fey on, they were talking about Paula Pell, who has been, in the comedy scene for such a long time, and she's in Girls Five Eva, and she's done a bunch of projects with Tina and with Amy Poehler, and Tina joked saying, "Yeah, Paula finally grew into her type, because when we were
Truly,
younger,
though.
she'd put on the gray wig or play the older funny woman, and now she is the older funny woman, and now she's working. Like it's just sort of not to say waiting it out, but sometimes that's what we have to do as actors. You just, oh, you're finally in that sort of desirable spot, not to use that word, but spot in terms of what the industry is looking for. The industry
Yeah,
shifts
and I mean
every
that
10
happened to
years,
me. That happened to me. Like, when I was younger, everyone said you'll work forever. You'll work a lot when you're older, and I was like, oh God, really? I was like, can I just work now?
Why when
And
I'm older? Yeah.
I mean, why when I'm older? And what does that even mean? And
Yeah.
like now, I've done 6 Broadway shows in the last 7 years.
Mm.
So I don't know what I'm doing different. I don't think I'm doing anything different. It's just some sort of weird magical alchemy that has happened and has allowed me to work. David Mamet, who is a crazy person, but he said something really great that I hold on to a lot, which is um, you when it comes to talent in this business, you either have it or you don't, and it's not a prerequisite for a career. So why worry about it?
I love that.
And I love that,
Yeah.
actually. I love so little about what he says nowadays necessarily, but I really love that, and it sticks in my bones.
Yeah. That, as you said, he says lots of things that are just like, but that was a good one.
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
that's
yeah.
definitely true. Um, if anything, you mentioned sort of like meritocracy before, and comedy is very much that, as you said, but the industry isn't necessarily that. It's not, and roles don't go to the most talented actor, the most hardworking person. It just goes to who fits the role best, and that's not always talent. Talent is one part of fitting the role. So there's so much, things in there. It's the look. It's, do you look like too many? I hear stories of, like, I listen to lots of retrospective podcasts on films and whatnot, and they said, like, oh, they forced this actress to dye her hair because they didn't want two blondes in the movie. It's like, what? Why? Like, what? They just, that old Hollywood standard is like so frustrating. Which
I
it's,
hate this phrase. The best person for the job gets the job. I actually despise that, and people still say it a lot, and I think it's wrong
mm,
because what we do is so subjective, and trying to put something objective, like an objective rule, on something that is so
right.
subjective, what we do as an art form, I feel like is dangerous and destructive.
Yeah.
And so I don't ever believe I'm the best person for the job. Even in The Cottage, I don't think I'm the best actor that could have probably played my part necessarily, but I am the actor playing the part.
Right.
And so I'm going to do my best doing it. And I'm going to do my best knowing that I got the job with 10 other people who could probably do it just as well as I do. And that's what gets me up and gets me to keep working on it every day. That's how you can do. People often ask me how you do like 2 years of the show, which I still don't know how I did it, but the way you do it is that you're constantly working on your craft. You're constantly working on your part. You're constantly, trying to find new things, trying to be in the moment, trying to express yourself that day as
Mhm.
fully and truthfully as possible. And this whole idea of the best person for a job, like I said, I think people should erase that from their mind. You know, you are a valuable person. I talk
Yeah.
about this in my acting classes sometimes, and this statistic is not this stat is not totally correct, but it's something like you are a 1 in 2.6 billion chance of being on the earth. 1 in 2.6 billion. Like the
Oh,
last Powerball lottery, I think you had like a 1 in 438 million chance of winning it, and that was over $1 billion. And so just think about that. You are a 4 times larger odd of being on this earth. So why wouldn't you express yourself fully? Why wouldn't you share your voice? That is how unique you are in the universe. And I think that's like a miraculous thing. And we all deserve then to express ourselves as fully and as honestly as we possibly can. And truthfully, it's just about trying to find your way to do that as an actor. And I challenge anyone who's listening to this to do that because
yeah.
that's what I do every day.
And before we go, sort of looking ahead, is there anything you haven't done yet in terms of like genre or anything like that that you really, really want to dive into?
I mean, I think I've been doing comedy a lot recently, and I've done drama. I've done everything. I'm really lucky. Like I said, I've gotten to do everything. I've gotten to do big roles, small roles. I've really gotten to put my stamp on things. What I really love to do is take things that people know. Like I did this version of Les Mis in Dallas that was this sort of like they call it Occupy Wall Street Les Mis, which was very popular for a short time. And I really got to take something that people knew really well and just turn it and show them a different side of it.
Hmm.
Um, and so I want to continue doing that. And I think I'm ready to do something serious again,
Yeah.
which I think requires a little different effort and sometimes a little less effort because comedy requires a lot of energy.
Yeah.
I think I'm ready to just sort of relax into something and just really try to express myself as I am today in a different way. And so that's what I just want to keep doing, and maybe get to play a big role on Broadway or
Mhm.
do a film. It'd be fun to do a film, I think. I think maybe to see what I do for a living, which is so much about being in the moment. If I could do that and make that translate to film, I would love that.
Yeah. And really having the same moment over and over, take after take, angle after angle. It was such a
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
such a tricky transition when I started doing more TV oriented stuff. I was like, wow, they take forever to in the
yeah.
time it could take you to, memorize a scene, they've done one angle of an entire
And it's
scene.
so deceptive. It's so deceptive. Like, you do a scene and you're like, the other person might not even be there. That
Yeah.
if they're doing the shot over his or her or their shoulder, they might not even be there. So it's like you're sometimes acting with a stand-in or with just a spot in the next to a camera.
Yeah.
And I always thought that that's crazy. It's so weird how we make films to deceive people in a lot of ways, and how just I mean, you see commercials. I think about this in commercials when I watch commercials all the time, and you see a couple, and you're like, I always think, knowing what I know now, that like basically you meet your couple at the callback, maybe, and then you see them again at the actual taping, and then you're expected to have this whole like backstory that seems to play out in seconds.
Yeah.
It's wild how deceptive TV and film is, but yeah, I would love to see if you could make that translate.
It's definitely sort of a not a work in progress, but just definitely something that, takes a lot of time. But once you're in it, you're in it. I feel like, by the time I had done a couple episodes of this one show, by like the third one, it felt like, okay, we're back. It's like we're at summer camp. It's like, oh, look at all these folks I've worked with before, and getting to explore a little bit more. That's really, really cool experience. But it's like,
I think that's
with
the fun thing about
yeah,
that, right? Like you get to like when you get to do a part like that, like if you're Mariska Hargitay on Law and Order, you know that character, you know Benson so well that literally it's your bones, it's in your bones, and that would be really really fun. I think.
yeah,
You know what I mean? I think that would be so much fun. Like probably thinking about those Elizabethan actors who played like Burbage, who played Falstaff for so long in his life. He probably knew Falstaff so well that like Falstaff just was him. In the same way that I've just compared Richard Burbage to Mariska Hargitay, which I'm that's choice, but but like I think that'd be so much fun, don't you think? To be
yeah.
able to play a character that long. I mean, I'm sure it has its drawbacks. You know, our director is Jason Alexander, and everyone knows him as George Costanza. So I'm sure that there are drawbacks that way. But at the same time, how beautiful is it to be compared with like that way?
And what would you say is the best advice you've ever gotten?
I would say once you get a part, stop auditioning for it. That's the first thing
Mm,
that comes to mind. You forget that very quickly. Once you get in a room, you're often trying to prove yourself. I still was, even in this room, I was trying to prove myself. But really, you have to stop auditioning for a part once you get the part.
yeah,
It's yours. Make it yours. People want to see you thrive. They don't want to see you. They don't want to see you ask for permission. Oftentimes, I mean, in this world, we need to get better at asking for permission for things. But on stage, you should be more willing to ask for forgiveness than permission when it comes to your craft. Now, when it comes to dealing with other actors, obviously permission is very important. But when it comes to expressing your own art, you should be you should be more willing to ask for forgiveness than ask for permission.
yeah. And in 10 words
Yeah.
or less, what advice would you give to a young actor?
To the I know itself be true.
Wow, love
To you,
that.
Shakespeare.
Yeah,
I mean, it's it is us. We build our whole careers on us. Our industry, if you want to become a business, like that's what, there's a difference between celebrities and actors in a lot of ways. Celebrities are actors, but celebrities are also their own business, and they, the way they've done it is by being themselves singularly. Sean Penn is Sean Penn, like Will Ferrell is Will Ferrell, Meryl Streep is Meryl Streep. Well, Meryl Streep's probably a little bit more chameleon-like than maybe those other two, but you have to find your way through you, and you have to find your way authentically through you. Like people get jobs and they go on YouTube, especially revivals of stuff, and then they'll watch whoever did it first and try to copy them. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Do it your way. Figure out how it speaks to you and express yourself, and be willing to be wrong.
Awesome. Nihal, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. It's such a pleasure chatting with
Thank
you.
you.
And again, congrats
Thank
on
you.
such a great run on the show. The
Thank you.
Cottage
This was
running
a hilarious
until
podcast.
yeah, thank
This
you.
is hilarious. I feel like I was so serious. I didn't know. So I hope people found at least 3 jokes in there somewhere.
Yeah. Well, if you want to see Nihal be hilarious, go see The Cottage on Broadway now at the Hayes Theater. Remind me, running until when?
October 29th, and then we go into the vault with the Disney DVDs.
Back into the vault.
Flipping.
Awesome. Well, Nihal, thank you again so much for talking with us about the issues.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Juan. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to Actors with Issues on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and visit our YouTube channel for full video interviews. Actors with Issues is executive produced and hosted by Juan Ayala. See you next time.